When billionaire Julian Vale hired a waitress to heal his grieving son, he thought money could fix anything. He was wrong. What started as a desperate transaction in Seattle's most exclusive restaurant became something far more dangerous, a collision of broken hearts, buried trauma, and a love nobody saw coming. This is the story of a father who tried to buy salvation, a woman who refused to be owned, and a 7-year-old boy caught between grief and hope. Stay until the end to see how it all unravels. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about grief is that it doesn't care about your tax bracket. Julian Vale learned that the hard way on a Wednesday night in March, sitting in Bellevue restaurant with 3 investors who wouldn't stop talking, a son who wouldn't stop crying, and a problem his money couldn't solve. The restaurant occupied the 42nd floor of the Cascade Tower, all floor-to-ceiling windows and carefully curated ambiance, the kind of place where the waitstaff moved like ghosts, and the wine list required a financial advisor. Seattle sprawled below in a glitter of lights and rain, the Space Needle piercing the clouds like it was trying to escape. Beautiful, cold, expensive. Julian had reserved the private corner table, the one that cost extra even though the entire meal would cost more than most people's rent. He needed this dinner, needed these investors. His company, Valetech Solutions, was 6 months from a product launch that would either revolutionize cloud infrastructure or become the most expensive mistake of his career. The 3 men across from him, Carter, an old money venture capitalist with perfect teeth, Zhang, a hedge fund manager who'd made billions on cryptocurrency, and Brennan, a private equity shark who smiled like he knew your secrets, held the keys to his future. And Julian couldn't focus on a single word they were saying, because Ethan was crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying that demanded attention. The quiet kind. The 7-year-old had mastered the art of silent tears over the past 18 months, ever since the accident. He sat beside Julian in a button-down shirt that was too formal for a child, his small shoulders hunched, staring at a plate of mac and cheese that the chef had prepared special because it was the only thing Ethan would agree to eat. He hadn't touched it. The projections for Q3 are conservative, Carter was saying, sliding a tablet across the table. But if you can demonstrate scalability before the end of fiscal, Dad, Ethan whispered. Julian didn't hear him, or maybe he did and chose not to. Later, he wouldn't be sure which was worse. Julian? Zhang leaned forward. You with us? Yeah. Julian forced his attention back to the table, to the numbers that should have mattered. Sorry, long week. Single parenting. Brennan chuckled, the sound sharp and knowing. Hell of a job. My ex-wife took mine in the divorce. Best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. Julian's jaw tightened. He wanted to tell Brennan to shut his mouth, that he had no idea what he was talking about, that losing a spouse wasn't the same as losing a marriage. But he didn't, because he needed Brennan's money, and rich men didn't get rich by letting emotions drive their decisions. So he smiled, nodded, took a sip of wine that tasted like ashes. Dad. Ethan's voice again, smaller this time. Not now, buddy, Julian murmured without looking at him. The thing was, Julian loved his son. Loved him so much it physically hurt sometimes. A constant ache in his chest that he'd learned to ignore the same way he ignored exhaustion and doubt and the screaming voice in his head that said he was failing at the only job that actually mattered. But love and competence weren't the same thing. Sarah had been the competent one. Sarah had known how to talk to Ethan, how to make him laugh, how to turn a scraped knee or a nightmare into an adventure. She'd been warm where Julian was cold, soft where he was sharp, present where he was. Absent. The word felt like a punch. 18 months. 18 months since the car accident that had taken her on a rainy Tuesday morning. She'd been driving to pick up Ethan from a playdate. The other driver had been texting. 3 seconds of inattention, and Julian's entire world had shattered into before and after. Before, he'd been a husband and a father who traveled too much and worked too hard but always had someone to come home to. Someone who made the house feel like more than just expensive furniture and good Wi-Fi. After, he was a single parent with no idea how to parent, running a company that demanded everything while raising a son who needed everything and failing catastrophically at both. The due diligence timeline is aggressive, Carter was saying, but if you can provide the documentation by Friday. Ethan made a sound, small, broken. Julian glanced down and his heart stopped. His son's face was blotchy and red, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. The mac and cheese sat untouched. Ethan's hands were clenched in his lap, shaking, and Julian had no idea what to do. "Hey!" He put a hand on Ethan's shoulder, aware of the investors watching. "You okay?" Stupid question. Of course he wasn't okay. The anniversary of Sarah's death had been 4 days ago. Julian had tried to acknowledge it. He'd let Ethan stay home from school, had ordered his favorite foods, had even attempted to look through old photos together. But it had all felt forced and awkward, two people trying to grieve in the same room without knowing how. Ethan just shook his head, not meeting his eyes. "Do you need to use the bathroom?" Julian asked, his voice low. Another head shake. "Are you hungry? You haven't eaten." Nothing. Panic crept up Julian's spine. He'd hired therapists, 3 different ones, and none of them had stuck. Ethan had clammed up in every session, giving one-word answers until the professionals gently suggested that maybe he wasn't ready, maybe he needed more time, maybe Julian should try again later. Later. Always later. "Julian," Zhang's voice had an edge now. "We're on a schedule here." "I know. Julian looked at his son, then at the investors, then back at his son. The weight of impossible choices pressed down on him. Walk away from this table, and he might lose the funding that kept his company alive. Stay, and he was choosing money over his kid. Again. He stayed. "Can you just—" Julian's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Can you just try to hold it together for 30 more minutes? Please?" The words were out before he could stop them. The kind of thing you said when you were desperate and exhausted and so far out of your depth, you couldn't see the surface anymore. Ethan flinched like he'd been slapped, and Julian watched his son's face do something terrible. It closed off. Shut down. The tears didn't stop, but something behind them died. "Okay," Ethan whispered. "Just that. Okay." Julian turned back to the investors, hating himself, and tried to focus on profit margins and growth projections while his 7-year-old son cried silently beside him. He didn't see the waitress watching from across the room. Isabella Cruz had been working at Bellevue for 8 months, and she'd learned 3 important rules. 1. Never make eye contact with the customers unless absolutely necessary. 2. Never speak unless spoken to. 3. Never ever get involved in the personal drama of people rich enough to eat here. She was about to break all 3. Isabella wasn't supposed to be in the private dining section tonight. That was reserved for the senior staff, the beautiful people with perfect posture and French accents that may or may not have been real. She was background crew, the kind of waitress who refilled water glasses and cleared plates without anyone noticing she existed, which was fine with her. Invisibility had its advantages, but Marcus, one of the senior servers, had called in sick, and the manager had grabbed her 30 minutes before service with that look that meant she couldn't say no. So here she was, in her standard black uniform with her hair pulled back tight, trying not to trip over her own feet while carrying a tray of drinks that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She'd noticed the little boy right away, not because he was loud or disruptive. The opposite, actually. He sat so still he barely seemed real, like someone had placed a very sad, very expensive doll at the table and forgotten about it. The man beside him, his father, obviously, they had the same dark hair and sharp cheekbones, was deep in conversation with 3 other men, all of them wearing suits that screamed money and watches that screamed more money. Business dinner. She'd seen hundreds of them. Usually the kids who got dragged along were either absorbed in phones or running around making the staff's lives miserable. This boy didn't either. He just sat there, staring at his untouched food, crying so quietly Isabella almost missed it. She delivered drinks to a nearby table, cleared plates from another, and kept glancing back at the corner booth. The father hadn't looked at his son in 15 minutes. The investors, she'd pegged them as investors from the way they talked, that specific brand of aggressive confidence, didn't seem to notice the kid existed. Isabella knew she should mind her own business. She was good at that. 28 years of being shy and anxious had taught her to keep her head down, do her job, and go home. She had her own problems. A 5-year-old daughter waiting at home with a babysitter she could barely afford, rent due in a week, a car that made suspicious noises every time she started it. She didn't have the luxury of getting fired for overstepping. But the boy was crying, and nobody was doing anything about it. The manager, Vincent, appeared at her elbow like a well-dressed ghost. "Table 12 needs their entrees," he murmured. "And Mr. Vale's party has requested the sommelier." Discreetly. "Got it." She moved through the motions, professional and invisible, but she couldn't stop watching the corner table. The father, Mr. Vale, had his hand on the boy's shoulder now, talking to him in a voice too low to hear. Whatever he said made the boy's face crumple and then go blank. That look. Isabella had seen it before, on her own daughter's face during the worst of the divorce. The moment when a child realizes that the adult who's supposed to protect them is just as lost as they are. Her chest tightened. "Isabella." Vincent again, a warning in his tone. "You're staring." "Sorry." She forced herself to turn away, to focus on her section, to remember that this wasn't her problem. Rich people had their own ways of dealing with things. They had nannies and therapists and boarding schools. They didn't need a broke waitress with no degree and too much empathy inserting herself into their lives. Except the boy was still crying, and his father was still ignoring him, and something about the whole scene felt so deeply, fundamentally wrong that Isabella couldn't swallow it down anymore. She made her decision in the space between heartbeats. Stupid, reckless, probably going to get her fired. But she'd spent too many years being careful, and where had it gotten her? Divorced, broke, and alone except for Mia. Maybe it was time to be stupid for someone else's sake. She grabbed a clean napkin, knelt down in front of her station, and carefully folded it into a simple bird. Her grandmother had taught her origami when she was young, one of the few good memories from a childhood full of holes. She wasn't great at it, but she could manage the basics. The swan looked lopsided. Good enough. Vincent was helping another table. The other servers were busy. No one was paying attention to her. Isabella took a breath, picked up her water pitcher like she had a reason to be there, and walked straight to the corner booth. The investors were mid-argument about market penetration. The father was staring at his phone, his jaw tight. The boy was looking right at her. Their eyes met, and Isabella's heart cracked clean open. She'd seen sad kids before. This was different. This was a child who'd learned that crying didn't help, that asking for things didn't work, that the safest option was to just disappear into yourself and wait for it to be over. She knew that kid. She'd been that kid. Before she could second-guess herself, Isabella knelt beside the boy's chair, a move that definitely violated protocol, and set the napkin bird on the table in front of him. "Hi," she said softly. The boy blinked at her, surprised. Up close, she could see how young he really was. 7, maybe 8 at most. His eyes were red and swollen, his nose running. He had a smudge of something on his collar. "I'm Isabella," she continued, keeping her voice low enough that the adults wouldn't hear. "I made you a friend. He's not very good at flying yet, but he's working on it." The boy stared at the origami swan, then at her, then back at the swan. "Do you like making up stories?" Isabella asked. "I do. It's kind of my favorite thing." A tiny nod. "Okay." She shifted slightly, settling into a crouch that her knees would complain about later. "See that woman over there? The one in the red dress?" The boy followed her gaze to a middle-aged woman dining alone 3 tables over, absorbed in her phone. "I think she's a spy," Isabella whispered conspiratorially. "She's pretending to text, but actually she's sending coded messages to her headquarters. See how she keeps looking at the door? She's waiting for her contact." The corner of the boy's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "And that man by the window, the one with the briefcase?" Isabella nodded toward an older gentleman who looked half asleep over his soup. "He's actually a retired magician. He still carries a rabbit in that briefcase, just in case he needs to do an emergency trick." "That's silly," the boy whispered. His voice was hoarse from crying. "Maybe," Isabella agreed, "but it's more fun than thinking he's just a boring businessman, right?" This time the smile broke through. Small and fragile, but real. Isabella's chest eased. She had no idea what was wrong, no idea what had made this kid so sad, but for 30 seconds she'd made it better. That counted for something. "What about him?" The boy pointed at one of his father's investors, the one with silver hair and a permanent scowl. "Oh, that's Mr. Grumpy Face," Isabella said seriously. "He used to be a pirate, but he retired when he got tired of parrots. Now he invests in treasure maps and complains about the stock market. The boy giggled. Actual sound this time, quiet but unmistakable. And that's when the father noticed. Isabella felt his gaze before she saw it. That particular quality of attention that meant someone with power was looking at her. She glanced up and met the eyes of Julian Vale. He was younger than she'd expected. Early 30s, maybe. Handsome in that specific way rich men often were, all sharp angles and expensive grooming. Dark hair slightly too long, like he'd missed a haircut. Eyes that were an unsettling shade of gray-blue, currently staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Not angry. Not exactly. Surprised, maybe. Confused. Sorry, Isabella said automatically, starting to stand. I was just… No. His voice was quiet but firm. Don't apologize. She froze, half standing, completely confused. Julian Vale looked at his son, really looked at him, and something crossed his face. Shame, maybe. Or grief. Or both. Thank you, he said to Isabella. The words sounded rusty, like he hadn't used them in a while. I should… She gestured vaguely toward the rest of the restaurant. Water. I was refilling water. Right. She stood fully, acutely aware that the three investors were now watching her too. One of them, the one with the perfect teeth, smiled in a way that made her skin crawl. Cute trick, he said. You do parties? Carter. Julian's voice had an edge now. Don't. Isabella grabbed her water pitcher and retreated, her face burning. She could feel Vincent's glare from across the room. She'd definitely crossed a line. The question was whether it would cost her the job. But when she glanced back at the corner table, the little boy was still smiling, turning the origami swan over in his hands like it was made of gold instead of a napkin. Worth it, she thought. Whatever happens, it was worth it. Julian couldn't focus on the rest of the dinner. The investors wrapped up their pitch, exchanged business cards, made noises about follow-up meetings. Jane clapped him on the shoulder and said something about getting back on track, whatever that meant. Carter made another inappropriate comment about the waitress, and Julian had to physically restrain himself from breaking the man's nose. Through it all, he watched Ethan. His son had stopped crying. He was still quiet, still not eating, but something had shifted. He held the napkin bird carefully, like it might fall apart if he squeezed too hard. Every few minutes, he'd glance around the restaurant, and Julian knew he was looking for the waitress. Isabella. She'd said her name was Isabella. When the investors finally left, an eternity compressed into 45 minutes, Julian turned to his son. You okay? Ethan nodded, still not quite meeting his eyes. You want to tell me what that was about? Earlier? A head shake. Julian sighed. He was so tired. Tired of not knowing what to do, tired of getting it wrong, tired of being the kind of father who needed a stranger to comfort his kid because he was too busy closing deals. The anniversary was hard, he said quietly, for both of us. I should have canceled this dinner. It's okay, Ethan said automatically. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Who was she? Ethan asked suddenly. The lady with the bird? Julian glanced around the restaurant, but Isabella had disappeared into the back, probably hiding from him, or from Vincent, the manager who ran this place like a military operation. Just a waitress, Julian said. But even as he said it, he knew it was wrong. She wasn't just anything. She'd done in 2 minutes what Julian had failed to do in 18 months, made his son smile. When they left, Julian tipped 30% and asked Vincent for the woman's name. Isabella Cruz, the manager said stiffly. She's relatively new. I apologize if she overstepped. She didn't, Julian interrupted. She was kind to my son. I wanted to thank her. Vincent's expression suggested he thought Julian was lying, but he didn't argue. Rich men didn't need reasons. In the car on the way home, a Tesla that drove itself while Julian pretended to check emails, Ethan fell asleep clutching the origami swan. Julian watched him in the rearview mirror, this small person who looked so much like Sarah it hurt. He'd been winging this whole single-parent thing for 18 months, throwing money and resources at the problem and hoping something would stick. Therapists, nannies, tutors, a fancy private school where the teachers sent weekly progress reports that all said the same thing. Ethan is withdrawn. Ethan doesn't engage. Ethan seems sad. No shit, Julian had wanted to scream. His mother died. Of course he's sad. But tonight, a waitress had knelt beside his son and made him laugh with a napkin and a made-up story about spies and magicians. No degree required, no therapeutic framework, just basic human kindness. The kind of thing Julian used to be capable of, before grief and guilt and exhaustion had turned him into someone he barely recognized. He pulled into the driveway of his house, a sprawling, modern mansion in Medina, all glass and steel and emptiness, and carried his sleeping son inside. The nanny, Mrs. Peterson, met him at the door with her usual disapproving expression. "Late again," she observed. "Business dinner." The sound conveyed exactly what she thought of business dinners that made 7-year-olds cry. Julian didn't have the energy to defend himself. He carried Ethan upstairs, tucked him into bed without bothering to change his clothes, and stood in the doorway watching him sleep. The origami swan sat on the nightstand. Julian picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It was just a napkin, folded paper, nothing special. But Ethan had smiled. An idea started forming in the back of Julian's mind. Reckless and probably stupid, the kind of thing he'd normally dismiss out of hand. But he was desperate, and desperation made people do crazy things. What if he could buy more of that? Not the bird, the person who made it. The woman who'd knelt beside a crying child and given him exactly what he needed without expecting anything in return. Julian had built a billion-dollar company on the principle that every problem had a solution if you were willing to pay for it. He'd hired the best engineers, the best designers, the best business strategists. Why not hire the best person for his son? The therapists hadn't worked. The nannies hadn't worked. Maybe what Ethan needed wasn't a professional. Maybe he needed someone who actually gave a damn. Someone like Isabella Cruz. Julian set the swan down carefully and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Marcus Chen, his head of security, and the closest thing he had to a friend. "I need you to find someone, Mum," he said when Marcus answered. "A waitress named Isabella Cruz. Works at Bellevue. I want to know everything. Background, family, financial situation, everything." "This about the thing with Ethan?" Marcus asked. He was one of the few people who knew how badly Julian was struggling. "Yeah. You gonna do something stupid?" Julian looked at his son, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. "Probably," he admitted. Marcus sighed. "I'll have it by morning." "Thanks." Julian hung up and stood there for a long moment, wondering if he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life or the smartest decision he'd ever made. Probably both. Isabella got home at 11:30, exhausted and anxious, and pretty sure she was about to be fired. Vincent hadn't said anything directly, but she'd felt his disapproval for the rest of the shift. The other servers had given her looks that ranged from curious to pitying. Everyone knew she'd broken protocol, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen. The babysitter, Mrs. Kim from downstairs, was asleep on the couch when Isabella let herself into the apartment. She woke with a start, gathered her things, and left with minimal conversation. Isabella paid her in cash, $20 an hour she couldn't afford but had no choice about. The apartment was small. One bedroom that Mia had claimed, leaving Isabella with a pull-out couch in the living room. The building was old, the heat unreliable, the neighbors loud. But it was theirs, and Isabella had fought hard to keep it after the divorce. She checked on Mia, found her daughter sprawled across the bed in princess pajamas, and felt something in her chest loosen. Whatever else was wrong in her life, she had this. A 5-year-old with her father's dark curls and her own stubborn chin, sleeping peacefully with a stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. Isabella changed into sweats, made herself tea. She was too tired to drink, and collapsed on the couch. Her phone buzzed. A text from her ex-husband, David. "Running late on child support again. Sorry. Next week for sure." Isabella stared at the message until the words blurred. Next week. Always next week. David had been saying that for 6 months, ever since he'd quit his job to pursue his passion for photography, which apparently meant taking pictures of his new girlfriend and forgetting he had a daughter who needed shoes and school supplies. She didn't respond. What was the point? Her mind drifted back to the restaurant, to the little boy with the sad eyes and the father who'd looked at her like she'd performed a miracle instead of just being kind. She wondered if they were okay, if the boy had stopped crying, if the father had noticed that his son needed more than money and expensive restaurants. Probably not her problem, except she couldn't stop thinking about it. Isabella had always been too empathetic for her own good. Her mother had warned her about it back before the cancer had taken her. "You feel too much," she'd said. "It's going to hurt you someday." Maybe today was that day. She fell asleep on the couch, still in her work clothes, dreaming about origami birds and children who cried alone. The file arrived in Julian's inbox at 6 a.m. He'd been awake for an hour already, running on coffee and insomnia, staring at emails he couldn't focus on. When his phone chimed with Marcus's message, he opened it immediately. Isabella Marie Cruz, background report. Julian scanned the document, absorbing details in quick, efficient gulps. Age, 28, single mother. Divorced 2 years ago from David Cruz, a freelance photographer with spotty employment history and a history of missed child support payments. One daughter, Mia, age 5. Currently working 3 part-time jobs, waitressing at Bellevue, cleaning houses on weekends, and occasional childcare for a family in Capitol Hill. No criminal record, no debt beyond normal student loans from a community college degree she'd never finished. No social media presence to speak of. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a low-income building, drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic, and had exactly $842 in her checking account. In other words, struggling but stable. Broke, but not broken. The kind of person who worked 3 jobs to keep her kid fed and still had the energy to comfort a stranger's crying child. Julian set the file down and rubbed his eyes. This was crazy. He knew it was crazy. You didn't just hire random waitresses to fix your family problems. That wasn't how the world worked. Except he'd tried it the normal way. 3 therapists, 2 nannies, a parade of well-meaning relatives who'd offered advice and disappeared when things got hard. And Ethan was still crying himself to sleep, still shutting down in school, still looking at Julian like he was waiting for his real dad to show up. Maybe crazy was exactly what they needed. He picked up his phone and called Marcus. "Did you read it?" Marcus asked without preamble. "Yeah." "And?" "I want to talk to her." Silence. Then, "Julian." "Man, I know you're desperate, but you can't just—" "I'm not going to do anything weird," Julian interrupted. "I just want to talk. Offer her a job." "What kind of job?" "Good question." "I'll figure that out when I see her," Julian said. Marcus sighed. "This is a bad idea." "Probably." "You know she's going to think you're insane, or a creep, or both." "I can live with that." Another pause. "You want me to set it up?" "Please." "You're going to owe me for this." Julian smiled despite himself. "Add it to the tab." He spent the rest of the morning trying to figure out what exactly he was going to say. "Hi, I'm a billionaire single dad, and I want to pay you to be nice to my kid," sounded like the opening line of a Law and Order episode. But what else was there? The truth? That he'd watched his son smile for the first time in months because of a napkin bird and a made-up story, and he was willing to do anything, pay anything, to see that smile again? That sounded even worse. By noon, Marcus had arranged a meeting for Thursday at Vailtech headquarters. Neutral territory. Professional. Isabella had agreed, apparently more confused than anything else. "She thinks it's a job interview," Marcus warned. "I didn't tell her what kind of job." "What did you tell her?" "That Julian Vale wanted to discuss an opportunity. She asked if it was about the restaurant. I said no." "And she still agreed?" "She's broke, Julian. Rich guy wants to talk to her about a job. She's not going to say no. Doesn't mean she'll say yes when you actually explain what you want." Fair point. Julian spent the next 3 days alternating between conviction that this was brilliant and certainty that he was losing his mind. Ethan asked about the bird lady twice, his voice small and hopeful. Julian told him he didn't know where she was, which was technically true, even if it was also a lie. Thursday arrived. Isabella showed up at Vailtech at 2 p.m., looking nervous and underdressed in jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. The receptionist called up to Julian's office, and he told her to send Isabella directly. When she stepped into his office, Julian was struck by how different she looked outside of the restaurant. Younger, somehow, more real. She had her hair down, dark and wavy, and she clutched a purse like it might try to escape. "Mr. Vale," she said, her voice soft. "I'm Isabella Cruz. Your assistant said you wanted to see me." Julian, he corrected. And yes, please sit. She sat on the edge of the chair across from his desk, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Julian had planned a whole speech, rehearsed it, refined it, but now that she was here, it all evaporated. My son won't stop talking about you, he said instead. Isabella blinked. I'm sorry? The other night, at Bellevue, you made him an origami bird. Recognition dawned. Oh, the little boy. Is he okay? Julian paused. How honest should he be? He's struggling. His mother died 18 months ago, and it's been hard. I'm so sorry, Isabella said, and she meant it. He could hear it in her voice. You made him smile, Julian continued. I haven't seen him smile like that in months, maybe longer. She didn't say anything, just waited. I want to hire you, Julian said. To Waitress? Confusion crossed her face. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Don't you need to talk to Bellevue about that? Not to Waitress. To help Ethan. Help him? How? This was it. The moment where he either sold her on the idea or scared her off completely. Ethan needs someone who understands him, Julian said carefully. Someone who can connect with him in ways I can't. The therapists haven't worked. The nannies haven't worked. But you, in 2 minutes, you did something none of them have managed. Isabella was shaking her head. I'm not a therapist. I'm not even a teacher. I just folded a napkin. You were kind, Julian corrected. You paid attention. You made him feel seen. That's what he needs. Mr. Vale, Julian. Julian, she repeated, looking increasingly uncomfortable. I appreciate that you think I helped, but I have a daughter. I have jobs. I can't just… I'll pay you, Julian interrupted. More than you're making now. Significantly more. That got her attention. How much more? She asked quietly. Julian named a figure, 6 figures annually. Enough to quit all 3 jobs and still have money left over. Isabella stared at him like he'd grown a second head. That's insane. For what, exactly? For spending time with Ethan, being there when he needs someone, helping him heal. That's not a job, Isabella said. I don't even know what that is. It's what I'm offering. She stood up abruptly. I should go. Wait. This is weird, Isabella said, her voice shaking slightly. You don't know me. I don't know you. You can't just throw money at someone and expect them to fix your family. I'm not trying to fix my family, Julian said, standing too. I'm trying to help my son. And yes, it's weird. I know it's weird. But I'm desperate, and you're the first person in 18 months who's made him smile. So I'm asking, please, just think about it. Isabella looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were brown, he noticed, warm and wary at the same time. I need to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need, here. He grabbed a business card from his desk and wrote his personal number on the back. Call me when you decide. She took the card like it might bite her. At the door she paused. Can I ask you something? Isabella said. Of course. That night at the restaurant, when you told him to hold it together, did you mean it? Julian's chest tightened. He'd hoped she hadn't heard that part. I was trying to handle an impossible situation, he said quietly. I handled it badly. Yeah, Isabella agreed. You did. Then she left, and Julian was alone in his office, wondering if he'd just made everything worse. But when he got home that night, Ethan was waiting at the door with the origami swan. Did you find her? He asked. Julian knelt down to his son's level. I did, he said. Is she coming back? I don't know, buddy. I hope so. Ethan nodded seriously, turning the swan over in his hands. Me too, he whispered. And Julian made himself a promise. Whatever it took, however insane it seemed, he was going to give his son this one thing. Even if it meant looking like a fool, even if it meant asking a stranger to save them both. Because love, real love, wasn't about doing the smart thing. It was about doing whatever it took. Isabella didn't call for 3 days. She carried Julian's business card around like a live grenade, pulling it out at random moments to stare at the number written on the back. In line at the grocery store. During Mia's bedtime routine. At 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep because her brain wouldn't stop spinning through all the ways this could go wrong. The money was absurd. life-changing. The kind of number that could erase every worry she'd accumulated over the past 2 years of scraping by on 3 jobs and David's broken promises. But money always came with strings. "You're being weird," Mia announced over breakfast on Saturday morning. She was eating cereal with the focused intensity of a 5-year-old who'd recently discovered that Fruit Loops turned milk purple. "I'm not weird," Isabella said automatically. "You keep looking at that card. The white one. What is it?" Isabella glanced at the business card sitting next to her cold coffee. "Just something from work." "Is it bad?" "No, baby. It's not bad." "Then why do you look scared?" "Kids, they saw everything." "I'm not scared," Isabella lied. "I'm just thinking." Mia tilted her head, considering this. Thinking about what? How to explain that a billionaire had offered her enough money to change their lives in exchange for doing something she didn't fully understand? That she was terrified of saying yes and equally terrified of saying no? "Grown-up stuff," Isabella said. "Boring." "Oh." Mia returned to her cereal, crisis averted. Isabella's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Kim. "Can you watch the Morrison twins tomorrow? They'll pay double. She should say yes." Double rate meant an extra $100 she desperately needed. But she was already scheduled to clean the Stevenson house tomorrow, and she'd promised Mia they could go to the park afterward. Another text, this one from David. "Can you take Mia next weekend? Got a photography thing in Portland." Isabella's jaw clenched. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "That's your weekend." His reply came immediately. "Come on, it's important. So is your daughter." The dots appeared and disappeared. Appeared again, then stopped. No response. Isabella set the phone down harder than necessary. This was her life. Constantly juggling, constantly compromising, constantly choosing between things that all mattered and knowing that something would always get dropped. She picked up Julian's card again. What if she said yes? What if she took the money and the weird job and the chance to actually breathe for the first time in 2 years? What was the worst that could happen? The answer came immediately. He could be a creep. He could fire her the moment she stopped being useful. He could expect things she wasn't willing to give. He could be using his son as bait for something darker. But then she remembered the little boy crying over untouched mac and cheese. The father who'd looked at her like she'd done something miraculous instead of just being decent. The desperate kind of exhaustion in Julian Vale's eyes that she recognized because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. Maybe he was just a dad who didn't know what he was doing, like her. Isabella pulled out her phone before she could talk herself out of it and dialed the number on the card. He answered on the second ring. "Isabella?" His voice was cautious, hopeful. "How did you know it was me?" "I've been waiting for you to call." "Fair enough." "I want to talk," Isabella said, "about the job, but I have conditions." "Okay." "I need to know exactly what you're asking for. And I need to meet your son properly, not at a restaurant, not with you hovering, just him and me, so I can see if this is even something that makes sense." Silence on the other end. Isabella held her breath. "When?" Julian asked finally. "Tomorrow. Afternoon. Somewhere neutral. A park? Maybe. Discovery Park? There's a playground on the north end." 2 o'clock, Isabella said. "I'll be there." "Just you and Ethan," Isabella clarified. "No assistants or bodyguards or whatever?" "Just us," Julian agreed. Isabella hung up and immediately wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Mia looked up from her purple milk. "Was that the boring thing?" "Yeah, baby, that was the boring thing." The next day, Isabella almost canceled twice. Once in the morning when she woke up with anxiety twisting her stomach into knots, and again at 1:30 when she was getting Mia ready and realized she had no idea what she was walking into. But she didn't cancel. She got Mia into her jacket, purple, with a unicorn on the back, and drove to Discovery Park in her piece of junk Honda that made concerning noises the whole way. The park was busy, families everywhere taking advantage of the rare Seattle sunshine. Isabella spotted Julian immediately. He was standing near the playground watching Ethan climb on the jungle gym with the same intense focus he'd probably used to build his billion-dollar company. He'd dressed down. Jeans and a sweater instead of the suit. He still looked expensive, but less like he'd just walked out of a board meeting. Ethan saw her first. His whole face transformed, and he half climbed, half fell off the jungle gym in his rush to get to her. "You came," he said, breathless. I did. Isabella knelt down to his level. Is that okay? Yeah. He was grinning now, the same smile from the restaurant. Did you bring more birds? Not today, but I brought someone else. Mia, come here. Her daughter had been hiding behind Isabella's leg, suddenly shy. She peeked out, saw Ethan, and retreated again. Mia's a little nervous around new people, Isabella explained. Mia, this is Ethan. Ethan, this is my daughter. Hi, Ethan said quietly. Mia didn't respond. She likes swings, Isabella offered. Do you like swings? Ethan nodded. Maybe you could show her the good ones? He looked at Isabella like he was checking for permission, then at his father, then back at Isabella. Okay, he said. The two kids walked toward the swings together, not quite together. Mia stayed a few steps behind, watching Ethan warily. Isabella stood, very aware that she was now alone with Julian Vale. Thank you for coming, he said. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided anything. Fair. They stood in awkward silence, watching the kids. Ethan was trying to figure out how to push Mia on the swing without actually talking to her. Mia was gripping the chains like her life depended on it. So, Isabella said, explain it to me again. What exactly would this job be? Julian shoved his hands in his pockets. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. That's not reassuring. I know. He looked at her directly. What I know is that Ethan needs help. Real help, not the clinical kind. He needs someone who can just be there, make him feel safe, help him remember how to be a kid again. And you think I can do that because I made him one origami bird? No, I think you can do that because you saw a crying child and helped him without expecting anything in return. That's not something you can train someone to do. Either you care or you don't. Isabella wanted to argue, but he had a point. I have a daughter, she said. A life. I can't just drop everything to be on call for your son. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be part of his life, however that looks. Maybe it's a few hours a day. Maybe it's less. I don't know. We'd figure it out together. And what happens when he gets attached and then you decide this isn't working? Julian's jaw tightened. That won't happen. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't. He turned to face her fully. But I can promise that I'm not doing this on a whim. I've spent 18 months watching my son disappear into himself. I've tried everything. This is the first thing that's actually worked, even a little. So yeah, I'm scared too. Scared of screwing it up, scared of making it worse. But doing nothing is definitely making it worse, so here we are. Isabella studied him. He looked tired up close. Shadows under his eyes, lines at the corners of his mouth. Rich and successful and completely out of his depth. What happened to his mom? She asked quietly. Car accident. Driver ran a red light. She died at the scene. Were you there? No, I was at work. The words came out flat. I'm always at work. There it was, the guilt underneath everything else. And you think hiring me will fix that? Isabella asked, not unkindly. No, but maybe it'll help while I figure out how to be a better father. At least he was honest. Over by the swings, something had shifted. Mia was actually swinging now, and Ethan was pushing her carefully, his face serious with concentration. Every time Mia went up, she giggled. Every time she giggled, Ethan smiled a little more. They're good together, Julian observed. They just met. I know. Isabella watched her daughter, fearless on the swing in a way she never was with adults. Watched Ethan, focused and gentle in a way that made her chest ache. I need you to understand something, she said. If I do this, and that's a big if, Mia comes first. Always. If this job ever conflicts with what she needs, she wins. Non-negotiable. Agreed. And I'm not moving in or doing anything weird. I have my own place, my own life. This is a job, not a family replacement. Okay. And if at any point this feels wrong or uncomfortable or like it's not helping Ethan, I'm out. I won't stay just for the money. Julian nodded. Anything else? Isabella thought about it. Yeah, you have to actually be his father. I'm not doing this so you can keep hiding behind work and staff and throwing money at problems. If I'm helping Ethan, you're helping Ethan too. Deal? He hesitated, and for a second she thought he might back out. Deal, he said finally. Okay then. Isabella took a breath. I'll try it. Trial period. 1 month. We see how it goes, and then we decide if this makes sense. The relief on Julian's face was almost comical. Really? Really? But I'm going to need the details. Salary, schedule, expectations, all of it in writing. I'll have my lawyer draw something up. Of course you will. They stood there for another moment, and Isabella had the distinct feeling she'd just agreed to something that was either going to save her life or completely destroy it. Hey, Julian said, for what it's worth. Thank you. Ask me again in a month if you still want to thank me. He smiled. Actual warmth this time. Fair enough. 3 days later, Isabella signed a contract that made her head spin. The salary was even more than Julian had initially offered. Health insurance, benefits, a clause that said she could terminate at any time for any reason with 2 weeks' notice. Her hands shook as she signed her name. You sure about this? Her friend Carmen asked. They were sitting in Carmen's kitchen, and Carmen had read the entire contract twice, looking for the catch. No, Isabella admitted, but when am I ever sure about anything? This is different. This is a rich guy you don't know offering you money to hang out with his kid. That's either amazing or the start of a Dateline episode. I know. Did you Google him at least? Isabella had. Extensively. Julian Vale, founder and CEO of Valetech Solutions, 32. Net worth estimated at $1.3 billion. Widower. No scandals, no controversies, no red flags beyond being absurdly wealthy and apparently terrible at parenting. He seems legitimate, Isabella said. Rich people always seem legitimate until they're not. Carmen, I'm just saying, be careful. Carmen softened. But also that money could change your life. You could quit those other jobs. Actually spend time with Mia. Maybe fix your car before it literally falls apart on the highway. All true. I'm scared, Isabella admitted quietly. Of course you are. You'd be an idiot not to be. Carmen reached across the table and squeezed her hand. But you're also brave as hell, and you're doing this for the right reasons. That counts for something. Isabella hoped she was right. The job started the following Monday. Julian had arranged for her to meet Ethan after school at the private academy he attended in Capitol Hill. The plan was simple. Pick him up, spend a few hours together, help with homework, or just talk or whatever felt right. No pressure, no agenda. Isabella arrived 15 minutes early and immediately regretted it. The other parents were a sea of expensive cars and designer clothes, all of them looking at her beat-up Honda like it had personally offended them. She was underdressed, under everything. When the kids started pouring out of the building, Isabella spotted Ethan immediately. He was walking alone, backpack dragging, that same defeated slump to his shoulders she'd seen at the restaurant. Then he saw her, and everything changed. Isabella! He ran over, nearly tripping over his own feet. You're here. I'm here. Is that okay? Yeah. He was grinning so wide it had to hurt. Where's Mia? She's at her school, but you'll see her later. Right now it's just us. That cool? He nodded enthusiastically. So, Isabella said as they walked to her car, what do you want to do? Ethan shrugged, suddenly shy. Homework? Head shake. Go somewhere? Can we go to your house? He asked quietly. Isabella hesitated. Her apartment was tiny and messy and nothing like what he was used to, but he was looking at her with those hopeful eyes, and she couldn't say no. Sure, she said, but it's not fancy, just so you know. I don't care about fancy. Of course he didn't. Fancy was probably all he'd ever known. The drive to her place took 20 minutes through Seattle traffic. Ethan sat in the back seat, quiet but not sad quiet. More like content quiet. He stared out the window and didn't complain when the car made its concerning grinding noise at every stoplight. When they got to the apartment building, Isabella felt a flash of embarrassment. The paint was peeling. The elevator was broken again. Her place was on the 3rd floor, accessible only by stairs that smelled faintly of old food and mystery. But Ethan didn't seem to notice. He followed her up, his small hand gripping the railing, and waited patiently while she fumbled with her keys. Sorry about the mess, Isabella said as she opened the door. The apartment was cleaner than usual. She'd stress cleaned the night before. But it was still obviously small and obviously cheap. The furniture was thrift store assembled. The TV was ancient, Mia's toys were everywhere despite Isabella's best efforts. Ethan stepped inside and looked around with wide eyes. "This is nice," he said. "You don't have to lie." "I'm not lying. It feels like people actually live here." The comment hit Isabella harder than it should have. What kind of life did this kid have that a cramped apartment felt more like home than a mansion? "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I have snacks." "Okay." They sat at her tiny kitchen table, and Isabella pulled out goldfish crackers and apple slices. Ethan ate like he'd never seen goldfish before, which maybe he hadn't. Rich kids probably ate organic nonsense and artisanal whatever. "So," Isabella said, "tell me about school." Ethan's face closed off slightly. "It's fine." "Fine good or fine bad?" "Just fine." She tried a different approach. "What's your favorite subject?" "I don't know. Maybe art." "Yeah, what kind of art?" "Drawing, I guess." "We don't do it much." "Why not?" He shrugged. "My teacher says we have to focus on important stuff, math and reading." Isabella filed that away. "Do you have friends at school?" Another shrug. "Not really." "How come?" "I don't know. People think I'm weird." "Why do they think that?" Ethan picked at his goldfish. "Because my mom died, and because I don't like the same stuff they like, and because I'm bad at sports." Every word was matter of fact, like he'd accepted these things as unchangeable truths about himself. "Hey," Isabella said gently, "you're not weird. You're just different, and different is good." That's what the therapist said. Smart therapist. I didn't like her. She asked too many questions. What kind of questions? About my mom, about how I feel, about whether I'm angry at my dad. He looked up at her suddenly. "Are you going to ask those questions too?" "Do you want me to?" "No." "Then I won't." Ethan studied her face like he was trying to determine if she was telling the truth. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Why did you take this job? My dad's paying you, right?" Brutal honesty from a 7-year-old. Isabella decided to match it. "Yeah, he's paying me. And honestly, I need the money. But that's not the only reason. What's the other reason?" "Because I saw you crying at that restaurant, and I wanted to help. And because my daughter needs friends, and I think you and Mia could be good friends. And because your dad seems like he's trying really hard, but doesn't know what he's doing, and I get that." Ethan considered this. "My dad works a lot." "I know. He used to work less, before my mom died. Now he works all the time. Maybe he doesn't know what else to do. That's what Mrs. Peterson says. She's the nanny. She doesn't like me very much." Isabella's heart cracked. "Why do you think that?" "Because she's always annoyed when I ask for stuff, and she tells my dad I'm difficult." "Are you difficult?" "Sometimes." He looked down. "I get sad and then I can't make it stop, and people get mad." "People get mad because you're sad?" "They don't say they're mad, but they look mad, like I'm doing something wrong." Isabella wanted to drive to Julian's house and shake him, shake all of them. This kid was grieving, and everyone around him was treating it like a behavior problem instead of a wound that needed time. "Hey," she said. "Being sad isn't wrong. You know that, right?" Ethan didn't answer. "Your mom died," Isabella continued. "Of course you're sad. You're allowed to be sad for as long as you need to be." The therapist said I should try to think happy thoughts. The therapist was an idiot. Ethan's eyes went wide, then he giggled. "You said a bad word." "I did. Don't tell your dad." "I won't." He was smiling now. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "I still talk to my mom sometimes. At night." "Is that weird?" Isabella's throat tightened. "No, baby, that's not weird at all." "My dad doesn't know. I think it would make him sad." "Maybe, or maybe it would make him feel better to know you still feel close to her." Ethan thought about this. "Do you talk to people who died?" "My mom," Isabella said. "She died when I was pregnant with Mia. Cancer. I talk to her all the time." "Does she answer?" "Not out loud, but sometimes I can hear her voice in my head, telling me what she'd say if she was here." "What does she say?" Isabella smiled. "Usually that I'm doing better than I think I am, that I'm stronger than I give myself credit for. Stuff like that. My mom would probably say I need to stop being so scared all the time. Or maybe she'd say being scared is okay, that everyone gets scared, even moms. Ethan looked at her with something like hope. You think so? I know so. They sat in silence for a moment, eating goldfish and apple slices. Outside, someone was yelling in the hallway. A door slammed, normal apartment building chaos. Ethan didn't seem to mind. Can I draw? He asked. Of course, I'll get you some paper. Isabella pulled out Mia's art supplies, crayons and markers and construction paper, and Ethan settled in at the table, suddenly focused. She made herself tea and watched him work, noticing how his shoulders relaxed, how his breathing evened out. This was what peace looked like on a 7-year-old who didn't get it often enough. When it was time to pick up Mia from her after-school program, Ethan came along. He helped carry Mia's backpack and listened while she chattered about her day. Something about finger painting and a boy named Marcus who'd eaten glue. Marcus is gross, Mia declared. Very gross, Isabella agreed. Back at the apartment, the two kids settled in like they'd known each other forever. Mia showed Ethan her room, which was barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser. Ethan showed Mia his drawings. They built a fort out of couch cushions and blankets and played some complicated game that involved stuffed animals and a lot of rules they made up as they went. Isabella made dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and sauce from a jar, and the three of them ate at the kitchen table while Mia told Ethan increasingly elaborate stories about her stuffed elephants adventures. It was ordinary, chaotic, loud, perfect. Julian arrived at 7 to pick up Ethan. He stood in the doorway of Isabella's apartment, looking completely out of place in his expensive clothes and expensive watch, and stared at his son like he'd never seen him before. Because Ethan was laughing, really laughing, the kind that came from somewhere deep and real. Hey, buddy, Julian said quietly. Time to go. Already? Ethan's face fell. It's a school night. Can I come back tomorrow? Julian looked at Isabella, uncertain. If Isabella says it's okay, he said. It's okay, Isabella confirmed. Ethan hugged her goodbye, quick and fierce, and then surprised everyone by hugging Mia too. See you tomorrow, he said. Bye, Ethan, Mia waved enthusiastically. At the door, Julian hesitated. Thank you, he said to Isabella. He looks, happy. He's a good kid. I know, He stopped, struggling. I don't know how to do what you do. You're his dad. You already know. You're just scared to trust yourself. Julian looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of just stating the obvious. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Same time. After they left, Isabella cleaned up the dinner dishes and got Mia ready for bed. Her daughter was bouncing off the walls, talking a mile a minute about Ethan and their fort and how he'd promised to teach her how to draw cats. Do you like him, Mama? Mia asked as Isabella tucked her in. I do. Do you? Yeah. He's sad sometimes, but also nice. Can he come over every day? We'll see, baby. I hope he does. I never had a big kid friend before. Isabella kissed her daughter's forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked open the way Mia liked. In the living room, she collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling, processing the day. It had gone well. Better than well. Ethan had opened up. Mia had been happy. The whole thing had felt natural instead of forced, but underneath the relief was a current of fear, because she'd seen the way Julian looked at her when he picked up Ethan, not like an employee, like someone who'd saved something precious he'd thought was lost. That kind of gratitude could turn into something else real fast, and Isabella had no idea what she'd do if it did. Her phone buzzed, a text from Julian. Thank you for today. Ethan hasn't stopped talking about it. She typed back, he's easy to be around. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. So are you, Julian wrote. Isabella stared at the message for a long time before deleting the conversation and putting her phone away. This was a job. That's all it was. She just had to keep reminding herself of that. The gossip started exactly 2 weeks after Isabella began working for Julian Vale. She first noticed it at Ethan's school pickup. The other mothers, and they were always mothers, never fathers, had started staring, not subtle glances, full-on stares, followed by whispered conversations and not quite hidden phones angled in her direction. Isabella tried to ignore it. She was good at being invisible, at not making waves. But invisibility only worked when people weren't actively looking for you. "Excuse me," a woman in yoga pants that probably cost more than Isabella's rent said, stepping into her path. "You're the new nanny?" The way she said nanny made it sound like an accusation. "I help with Ethan, yes," Isabella said carefully. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How nice for Julian. Must be quite the job." There was something ugly underneath the words. Isabella felt it but couldn't name it. "It's fine," she said, trying to step around. "I'm sure it is." The woman's voice dropped. "Just between us? Be careful. Single fathers with money can be complicated." Before Isabella could respond, Ethan appeared, backpack dragging as usual. "Ready?" Isabella asked him, grateful for the escape. "Yeah." As they walked away, Isabella heard the woman say something to her friend. She didn't catch all of it, just fragments, moved fast, and obvious what's happening. Her stomach twisted. At the apartment, Mia and Ethan immediately disappeared into their blanket fort while Isabella made snacks on autopilot. Her phone buzzed, a text from Carmen with a link and 3 exclamation points. Isabella clicked it. The gossip blog loaded slowly on her ancient phone. When it finally appeared, her heart stopped. There was a photo of her and Julian, grainy but recognizable, taken at Discovery Park the day they'd met to discuss the job. In the image, they were standing close, talking. The angle made it look intimate, almost romantic. The headline read, "Tech Billionaire, Julian Vale's Secret Romance with Mystery Woman." The article was worse. Pure speculation dressed up as fact, calling Isabella his new girlfriend, speculating about how they'd met, wondering if this was why he'd been so withdrawn since his wife's death. It mentioned Ethan. It mentioned her frequent visits to his home, which was a lie. She'd never been to his house. It called her a struggling single mother who'd landed the ultimate catch. Isabella read it twice, nausea building. Her phone rang. Julian. "Did you see it?" he asked without preamble. "Just now." "I'm sorry, my publicist is already working on a retraction, but these things, they spread fast." "How did they even get that photo?" "Someone at the park, probably, or one of the other parents at school. I don't know." He sounded angry and tired in equal measure. "Look, this will blow over. It always does, just ignore it." "Easy for you to say." "I know, I'm sorry. This is my fault." "How is it your fault?" "Because I didn't think about this. About how it would look. I just wanted to help Ethan, and I didn't consider that people would make it into something it's not." Isabella looked at the kids in their fort, oblivious to the mess unfolding around them. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. "Nothing. We keep doing what we're doing. Let them talk. Eventually they'll find something else to obsess over." He was probably right, but the knot in Isabella's stomach didn't loosen. The next day, it got worse. Isabella arrived at school pickup to find a small crowd of mothers clustered near the entrance, all looking at their phones. When they saw her, several quickly looked away. Others kept staring. One of them, a blonde woman Isabella vaguely recognized, approached with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Isabella, right? I'm Vanessa Chen. My son is in Ethan's class." "Hi." "Listen, I just wanted to say, we're all very progressive here. Nobody judges. You do what you need to do." The implication was clear. "But maybe be a little more discreet for Ethan's sake?" Isabella's face burned. "I don't know what you think is happening, but, oh honey, it's all over page 6 and Seattle Social, and well, everywhere." Vanessa's voice dripped false sympathy. "I'm just saying the boy's been through enough. Maybe don't parade your relationship in front of his school." "There is no relationship." "Sure." Vanessa patted her arm condescendingly. "Just some friendly advice, mother to mother." She walked away before Isabella could respond. Inside, rage and humiliation warred for dominance. She wanted to scream that they had it all wrong, that she was just trying to help a sad kid, that not everything was some sordid scandal. But who would believe her? When Ethan emerged from school, he was quieter than usual. "You okay?" Isabella asked. He nodded, but it was a lie. In the car, he finally spoke. Some kids were asking about you today. Isabella's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yeah? What did they ask? If you're my dad's girlfriend, if you live with us, stuff like that. What did you tell them? That you're my friend. But they didn't believe me. He stared out the window. Marcus said his mom said you're a gold digger. What's that? Isabella wanted to drive into a wall. It's something mean people say when they don't understand a situation, she said carefully. Oh. They drove in silence. At the apartment, Ethan was subdued. Even Mia couldn't get him to fully engage. He drew pictures but didn't talk, ate his snack without tasting it. Hey, Isabella said, sitting beside him. Talk to me. About what? About whatever's bothering you. Ethan set down his crayon. Do you like my dad? The question landed like a brick. Of course I like him. He's... No, I mean like. The way grown-ups like each other. Isabella chose her words carefully. Your dad is a nice person, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I like spending time with you. That's the truth. Promise? Promise. He seemed to accept this, but something had shifted. A wariness that hadn't been there before. That evening, Julian showed up early to pick up Ethan. He looked like he hadn't slept. We need to talk, he said. Isabella sent the kids to Mia's room. Berman closed the door. This is getting bad, Julian said without preamble. My publicist is fielding calls from actual news outlets now. Entertainment shows. Someone tried to follow Ethan from school. What? A photographer. Marcus scared him off, but he ran a hand through his hair. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Maybe we should stop, Isabella said. The words hurt coming out. Take a break until it dies down. No. Julian's response was immediate. That's what they want. And more importantly, Ethan needs this, needs you. I'm not taking that away from him because some bored rich people need something to gossip about. But if it's hurting him, is it, or is it just uncomfortable? Fair question. The kids at school are asking him about us, Isabella said, calling me a gold digger. Julian's jaw clenched. Which kids? Does it matter? It matters to me. Beating up 7-year-olds won't help. I'm not going to beat up 7-year-olds. A pause. I'm going to have a conversation with their parents. Julian, no. This stops now. I'll talk to the school. I'll release a statement, whatever it takes. He looked at her directly. But I'm not letting you quit. Not unless you actually want to. I don't want to, Isabella admitted. But I don't want to make things harder for Ethan either. You're not making things harder. You're the only thing making them easier. The intensity in his voice caught her off guard. Okay, she said finally. We keep going, but if it gets worse, it won't. He was wrong. 3 days later, the story evolved. Someone had dug deeper, found out about Isabella's apartment, her jobs, her daughter. A new article appeared, this one focused on the Cinderella story of a poor waitress landing a billionaire. They printed her address. Carmen called at midnight, furious. Did you see? I saw. They doxed you. That's illegal, right? I don't know. Julian needs to fix this. He's trying. Not hard enough. Carmen's voice softened. I'm worried about you. This isn't worth it. But it was. Somehow, despite everything, it was. The next morning, Isabella woke to find a photographer camped outside her building. When she took Mia to school, he followed. When she went to pick up Ethan, he was there too. Julian's publicist issued a statement that afternoon. Mr. Vale has hired Ms. Cruz to provide companionship and support to his son during a difficult time. Their relationship is strictly professional. We ask that the media respect their privacy. It did nothing. If anything, it made things worse. Now people were debating whether companionship and support was code for something else, whether Julian was paying for more than childcare, whether Isabella was taking advantage of a grieving man. The speculation was everywhere. Isabella couldn't open social media without seeing her face, couldn't go anywhere without feeling watched. And then Julian made a decision that changed everything. Move in, he said. They were in his car. He'd insisted on picking up Ethan himself that day, and Isabella had come along. Marcus was driving, silent and professional in the front seat. What? Isabella said. To the house, you and Mia. Move in. Are you insane? Probably, but hear me out. Julian shifted to face her. The media is camped outside your apartment, following you everywhere, making your life hell. At my place, we have security, gates, privacy. They can't touch you there. That will make it worse. People already think it's... I don't care what people think. I care that you're safe, that Mia's safe. Julian, it's temporary. Just until this dies down. A few weeks, maybe a month. You'd have your own space, no pressure, no expectations, just safety. Isabella looked at him like he'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. People will lose their minds. Let them. Ethan will get confused. Ethan will be thrilled. He asks every day why you have to leave. That was true. The goodbyes had gotten harder. Ethan clung to her at drop-off, and Mia had started asking when they could have sleepovers. This is crazy, Isabella said. I know. It's going to make everything more complicated. Also true. And you're still suggesting it. I am. Isabella stared out the window at Seattle, sliding past. Rain had started, because of course it had. Everything about this situation felt like a storm she couldn't outrun. I need to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. But they both knew time wasn't really on their side. That night, a photographer got too close to Mia at her school, got pictures of her face, her classroom through the window, posted them online with speculation about how Julian Vale's girlfriend's daughter was living the high life now. Mia was 5 years old. Isabella called Julian at 11 p.m., shaking with rage and fear. Okay, she said, we'll move in, but I have conditions. Name them. Separate space, completely separate. I'm not sharing a bedroom or pretending to be something I'm not. Done. And Mia's room needs to feel like home. I'm not making her sleep in some sterile guest room. Whatever you need. And if at any point this feels wrong, we're out. No arguments. Agreed. And we tell Ethan the truth, that this is temporary, that we're doing it for safety, not because we're... She couldn't finish the sentence. I'll tell him, Julian said quietly. They moved in 3 days later. The house, mansion really, was in Medina, behind gates and walls and enough security to protect a small country. Marcus supervised while movers brought Isabella's pathetic collection of furniture and belongings into what Julian called the guest wing, which was larger than her entire apartment had been. Mia ran through the rooms screaming with joy. Mama, there's a bathtub big enough to swim in. Isabella stood in the massive bedroom that was now supposedly hers, surrounded by boxes, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Ethan appeared in the doorway, grinning. You're really staying? For now. This is the best day ever. She wished she felt the same way. The first week was awkward. Isabella couldn't figure out how to exist in a house where someone else cooked meals, cleaned rooms, and managed every detail of daily life. She kept trying to help, and the staff kept gently redirecting her. Mrs. Peterson handles the laundry, the housekeeper Maria said when Isabella tried to wash Mia's clothes. Chef Laurent prepares meals, the assistant said when Isabella attempted to make dinner. She felt useless, like a guest in a place she was supposed to be living. Julian was barely there. Meetings, calls, travel. When he was home, he was locked in his office or collapsed in bed. They passed each other in hallways like ships in the night, but the kids thrived. Ethan and Mia were together constantly. They built forts in the massive living room, drew pictures at the kitchen island, played in the yard that was bigger than the park near Isabella's old apartment. Watching them, Isabella felt the first stirrings of something that might have been hope, until Ethan overheard the conversation. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks into their stay. Julian had come home early for once, and Isabella was in his office discussing Ethan's upcoming parent-teacher conference. The teacher says he's doing better, Isabella said. More engaged, actually talking to other kids. That's good. But she also mentioned the rumors, said some parents have complained that the situation is inappropriate. Julian's expression darkened. What situation? Us. Me living here. They think, Isabella gestured vaguely, you know what they think. I don't care what they think. Well, I do. And I care that it's affecting Ethan. How is it affecting him? He got into a fight yesterday. Another kid said something about me, and Ethan pushed him. Julian was quiet for a moment. What did the kid say? Does it matter? It matters to me, Isabella sighed. He said I was only here for your money. That you were paying me to... She stopped. It doesn't matter what he said. What matters is that Ethan is defending something that doesn't need defending because we haven't been clear about what this actually is. What is it? Julian asked. The question hung in the air. It's a job, Isabella said firmly. That's all it is. Right. Something flickered across Julian's face. A job. Neither of them noticed Ethan standing in the hallway outside the office, listening. That night, Ethan didn't come to dinner. Isabella found him in his room, the door locked. Ethan, you okay? Go away. Her heart sank. Can we talk? No. Please? Silence. Isabella sat down outside his door, back against the wall. I'm not leaving. I'm just going to sit here until you're ready. 20 minutes passed. 30. Finally, the door opened. Ethan's face was blotchy and red. He'd been crying. Hey, Isabella said softly. Want to tell me what's wrong? You lied. The words hit like a slap. About what? About why you're here. You said you liked spending time with me, but you're just doing it for money. Oh no. Ethan, I heard you. Talking to my dad. You said it's just a job. That's all it is, his voice cracked. So you don't actually care about me. You're just pretending because he pays you. Isabella felt something crack open in her chest. That's not true. You just said it was a job. It is a job, but that doesn't mean I don't care about you. Both things can be true at the same time. That doesn't make sense. He was right. It didn't. Come here, Isabella said, sitting on his bed. Ethan hesitated, then sat beside her, as far away as the mattress allowed. When I first met your dad, he offered me money to spend time with you. That's true. And I took it because I needed the money. Also true. She took a breath. But the reason I kept showing up, the reason I agreed to move here, even though it's weird and complicated, isn't because of money. It's because I like you. Because Mia likes you. Because you make us both happy. Really? Really? You think I'd let anyone pay me enough to live in a house with a nanny who hates me and staff who think I'm an idiot? No way. I'm here because I want to be. Ethan wiped his eyes. Mrs. Peterson doesn't hate you. She definitely hates me. A tiny smile. Maybe a little. See? I'm doing this for you, buddy. Not for money. Not for your dad. For you. He leaned against her slightly. Promise? Promise. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, rain pattered against the windows. The house made settling noises around them. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Anything. Do you think my mom would like you? The question sucker punched her. I don't know, Isabella said honestly. I hope so. I think she would. You're kind of like her. You pay attention. Isabella's eyes stung. Your mom sounds like she was pretty great. She was. Ethan picked at a thread on his comforter. I'm scared I'm going to forget her. You won't. How do you know? Because the people we love don't disappear. They live in here. She tapped his chest. In the way you remember them. In the things they taught you. In the way you treat other people. Ethan considered this. Do you still remember your mom? Every day. Does it still hurt? Sometimes, but it's different now. Less sharp. More like an ache. When will it stop hurting for me? Isabella pulled him close. I don't know, baby. But I'll be here while you figure it out. I promise. She thought they'd made it through the storm. She was wrong. The next morning, everything fell apart. Isabella woke to the sound of shouting downstairs. She threw on a robe and ran down to find Julian in the foyer, blocking the door, while Mrs. Peterson, the nanny, argued with him in rapid, angry sentences. Completely inappropriate. I've kept quiet, but this has gone too far. Mrs. Peterson, this isn't the time. When is the time? When you've completely destroyed that boy's understanding of appropriate boundaries. When she's taken you for everything you're worth. Excuse me? Isabella said from the stairs. Mrs. Peterson whirled. Oh, don't play innocent. I know exactly what you're doing. Swooping in, playing the savior, getting yourself and your daughter into this house. That's enough, Julian said, his voice ice. No, it's not enough. That boy needs stability, not some gold digger playing house. The word hit the room like a grenade. Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. I'm not... Mrs. Peterson, Julian cut in, his voice deadly quiet. You're fired. Pack your things and leave. Now. The nanny's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. Completely serious. You have 1 hour. Julian, think about what you're doing. I'm thinking very clearly. You just called someone I respect a gold digger in front of my son. You're done. For the first time, Isabella noticed Ethan and Mia standing in the hallway, watching everything. Mrs. Peterson saw them too, her face crumpled. Ethan, I'm sorry. I'm trying to protect you. Leave, Julian said. The nanny fled upstairs. In the silence that followed, nobody moved. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Julian said to Ethan. Is Isabella a gold digger? Ethan asked, his voice small. No. Then why did Mrs. Peterson say that? Julian knelt down. Because some people don't understand that caring about someone doesn't always mean what they think it means. I don't understand either, Ethan said. Isabella's phone buzzed. Then again and again. She pulled it out and her stomach dropped. The story had broken everywhere. Photos from inside the house. Someone had sold them, probably Mrs. Peterson, showing Isabella and Mia living in the guest wing. Headlines screaming about live-in arrangements and secret relationships. But worse than the photos was the new angle. Someone had dug into Isabella's past, found out about her failed marriage, her ex-husband's debt, her multiple jobs. Spun it into a narrative about a desperate woman latching onto a rich man. We need to talk, Julian said, taking her phone. He looked at the screen and his face went white. Pack a bag, he said. What? You and Mia. We're leaving. All of us. Getting out of Seattle until this blows over. We can't just run. Watch me. But before they could move, the doorbell rang. Julian opened it to find a woman standing on the porch. Mid-40s, blonde, wearing expensive clothes, and an expression of practiced grief. Hello, Julian, she said. Julian froze. Catherine, can I come in? No. The woman, Catherine, looked past him to Ethan, her face transformed. Oh, sweetheart, look how big you've gotten. Ethan took a step back. Who is that? Isabella asked Julian quietly. My sister-in-law, he said. Sarah's sister. Catherine pushed past Julian into the foyer, her eyes scanning everything, the packed bags, Isabella's presence, the general chaos. So it's true, she said. You've moved your little mistress into my sister's house. Get out, Julian said. I don't think so. Not when you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Not when my nephew needs protection. Ethan doesn't need protection from me. Doesn't he? You fire his nanny, you move in some random woman and her child. You're all over the tabloids. Catherine's voice rose. Sarah would be horrified. Don't. Julian's voice was dangerous. Don't you dare speak for her. Someone has to. You've clearly lost all judgment, and I'm not going to stand by while you destroy Ethan's life. I'm helping Ethan's life. By parading your new girlfriend in front of him? By replacing his mother with someone you're probably sleeping with? Isabella had heard enough. I'm not sleeping with him. Catherine's gaze shifted to her, cold and assessing. Oh, honey, I'm sure that's what you tell yourself. It's the truth. Is it? Or are you just smart enough to wait until he's desperate enough to propose? Mama? Mia's voice was small and scared. That did it. Isabella grabbed her daughter and Ethan and shepherded them toward the stairs. Isabella, Julian started. Handle this, she said. I'm getting the kids away from her. She took them upstairs, their scared faces breaking her heart. Behind her, she could hear Julian and Catherine screaming at each other, words like custody and lawyers and unfit parent echoing through the house. In Mia's room, Isabella held both kids close. Is that lady going to take me away? Ethan whispered. No, Isabella said, praying it was true. But she could hear Catherine downstairs still screaming, making threats, demanding rights she'd never exercised before. And Isabella realized with crushing certainty that this wasn't going to blow over. This was just the beginning. Catherine didn't leave. She stood in Julian's foyer for another 20 minutes, hurling accusations and threats while he tried to maintain control. Isabella could hear it all from upstairs, her arms wrapped around two terrified children who didn't understand why the adults in their lives kept destroying everything. "You're unstable," Catherine was saying. "Clearly unstable, and I have a lawyer who will prove it." "You haven't seen Ethan in over a year," Julian shot back. "You didn't come to his birthday. You didn't call on the anniversary of Sarah's death. But now, suddenly, you care?" "I've always cared. You shut me out. You shut yourself out. You couldn't handle the grief, so you ran. Don't pretend this is about Ethan." "Everything I do is about Ethan. He's all I have left of my sister." The words echoed through the house, raw and broken. Mia buried her face in Isabella's shoulder. "I don't like the yelling." "I know, baby. Me neither." Ethan was silent, his face pale, his hands clenched in his lap. Isabella recognized that look. It was the same one he'd worn at the restaurant that first night, the look of a child learning to disappear. "Hey," she said softly, touching his shoulder. "You okay?" He shook his head. "Want to talk about it?" "She wants to take me away, doesn't she?" "Aunt Catherine." Isabella couldn't lie to him. "I don't know what she wants. She doesn't even like me. She cried at Mom's funeral, and then she left, and she never came back." His voice was flat, factual. "But now she's here, and she's mad at Dad, and it's because of you." The accusation stung because it was true. "Yeah," Isabella said quietly. "It is because of me." "So, maybe you should leave." The words hit harder than they should have. Isabella looked at this 7-year-old boy who'd been through too much, who was trying to solve adult problems the only way he knew how. "Is that what you want?" she asked. "For me to leave?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. His jaw worked like he was trying to find the right words. "I don't want you to leave," he said finally, "but I don't want everyone to be fighting either, and maybe if you weren't here they'd stop." Mia lifted her head. "We can't leave. Ethan's my best friend." "Mia, hush," Isabella said gently. "But Mama—" "Not now, baby." Downstairs, a door slammed. Footsteps on the stairs. Julian appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last hour. "She's gone," he said. "For how long?" Isabella asked. "I don't know. She's threatening to file for emergency custody. Says I'm an unfit parent." He laughed, bitter. "Maybe she's right." "Don't," Isabella said sharply. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Feel sorry for yourself. Not in front of him." She nodded toward Ethan. Julian's face crumpled. He crossed the room and knelt in front of his son. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. "I'm sorry for all of this." Ethan stared at his father with those two old eyes. "Are you going to make Isabella leave?" "What? No. Why would you think that?" "Because everyone's mad that she's here. Mrs. Peterson and Aunt Catherine and all the people at school. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is wrong." "It's not wrong," Julian said firmly. "Then why is everyone so angry?" Julian looked at Isabella, helpless. She shook her head slightly. This was his question to answer. "Because people don't understand," Julian said carefully. "They see a situation that looks one way and they assume that's what it is. But they don't know the truth." "What's the truth?" "Good question. Isabella wanted to know too." Julian took a breath. "The truth is that I hired Isabella because I was desperate and lost, and I didn't know how to help you. And yeah, I'm paying her. But that doesn't make what she does any less real. She cares about you. I see it every day. That's not fake just because there's a contract." Ethan processed this. "But what if Aunt Catherine takes me away?" "She won't." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let her. And because no judge is going to give custody to someone who's been absent for a year over a parent who's here every day doing his best." "Even if you're dating Isabella?" Ethan asked. Julian froze. "I'm not dating Isabella." "Everyone says you are." "Everyone's wrong." Ethan looked between them, confused. "But you like her, right?" The question hung in the air, loaded and dangerous. "I respect her," Julian said carefully. "I'm grateful for what she's done for you, but this is a professional relationship, nothing more." Something flickered across Ethan's face. Disappointment, maybe. Or relief. Isabella couldn't tell. "Okay," he said quietly. Julian pulled his son into a hug. Over Ethan's shoulder, his eyes met Isabella's. There was something in that look she couldn't read. Something complicated. That night, after the kids were asleep, Isabella found Julian in his office staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked from the doorway. He laughed without humor. "No. You?" "Also no." "Want a drink?" "I probably shouldn't." "Neither should I." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey anyway, handed her one. "Sit." Isabella sat on the leather couch that probably cost more than her car. The whiskey burned going down. "Catherine's serious," Julian said. "Her lawyer already sent papers. She's filing for emergency custody tomorrow." "On what grounds?" "Moral unfitness, bringing a woman into the home, creating an unstable environment, the usual." "Will it work?" "I don't know. Probably not. But it'll be ugly. Depositions, character witnesses. They'll drag you through hell." Isabella set down her glass. "Then maybe I should leave. Go back to my apartment until this is sorted out." "No." "Julian, I said no." He looked at her directly. "You leave, and it looks like we're guilty. Like we have something to hide. Besides, the kids need you here, especially now." "The kids or Ethan?" "Both. Mia needs stability too, and taking her away from here, from him—" Julian shook his head. "I'm not doing that to either of them." Isabella wanted to argue, but he was right. The kids were bonded now. Separating them would cause more damage. "So what do we do?" she asked. "We fight. My lawyer's good. We show the court that Ethan's thriving, that this arrangement, weird as it is actually helping him. We get testimony from his teachers, his therapist. He doesn't have a therapist anymore. Then we find him a new one, someone who will testify that he's improving." Julian ran a hand through his hair. "Whatever it takes. I'm not losing my son." The desperation in his voice was painful to hear. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said. "Yeah. Why did Catherine really disappear?" "After Sarah died, I mean." Julian was quiet for a long moment. "Guilt, I think. She and Sarah had a fight the day before the accident. Something stupid about their mother's estate. They didn't speak for 3 months. Then Sarah died and Catherine never got to apologize. She couldn't handle it. Couldn't look at Ethan without seeing her sister. So she left. And now she's back because she found something easier to hate than herself." Julian finished. "Me, you, the situation, it's less painful than dealing with her actual grief." Isabella understood that. Anger was always easier than sadness. They sat in silence, drinking whiskey neither of them wanted. "I'm sorry," Julian said finally. "For all of this. You signed up to help a kid, not to get dragged through custody battles and tabloids. I knew it was complicated." "Not this complicated." "Fair point. Can I ask you something else?" Isabella said. "Sure." "Earlier, when Ethan asked if you liked me, you said it was just professional. Did you mean that?" The question came out before she could stop it. Blame the whiskey, blame the stress, blame the fact that she'd been wondering the same thing for weeks and was too scared to examine why. Julian set down his glass very carefully. "Why are you asking?" "Because I need to know where we stand. If this is just a job, fine. I can handle that. But if it's something else, or if it could become something else, then we need to talk about it before it gets messier." "It's a job," Julian said. "Okay. That's what you wanted to hear, right?" "I don't know what I wanted to hear," Isabella admitted. They looked at each other across the office, and the air felt charged with everything they weren't saying. "I should go to bed," Isabella said, standing. "Isabella." "Good night, Julian." She left before he could finish. Before she could do something stupid like ask him to be honest instead of careful. Before she could admit that somewhere along the way, this had stopped feeling like just a job to her too. The next week was a nightmare. Catherine's lawyer moved fast. Emergency hearing scheduled. Court-appointed child advocate assigned to evaluate the home situation. Isabella and Mia interviewed separately to assess the nature of the relationship. The advocate, a stern woman named Dr. Morrison, showed up unannounced and spent 3 hours observing. She watched Isabella with the kids, questioned the arrangement, took notes that felt like indictments. "And you live here?" Dr. Morrison asked. "In the same house as Mr. Vale." "In the guest wing?" "Yes." "Separate bedrooms?" "Of course." And your relationship with Mr. Vale is professional. Dr. Morrison's expression suggested she didn't believe it. At school, things got worse. Parents who'd been merely gossipy became openly hostile. Someone started a petition to have Ethan removed from the class because the situation was inappropriate for young children to witness. Isabella stopped doing pickup. Marcus took over, stone-faced and efficient. The kids noticed. Of course they noticed. "Why can't you come to school anymore?" Ethan asked one afternoon. "It's better this way," Isabella said, hating the weakness in her answer. "Because people are mean to you." "Ethan, I heard Dad talking to his lawyer. They said people think you're a bad person, but you're not. You're the nicest person I know." Isabella pulled him close. "Thank you, buddy." "I told Dr. Morrison that. When she asked about you, I said you make me happy." "What else did she ask?" "If you and Dad kiss, if you sleep in the same room, lots of weird stuff." He pulled back to look at her. "I told her the truth, that you don't, but I don't think she believed me. It's because the truth was too simple, too boring. Adults needed drama, needed something salacious to explain why a billionaire would hire a waitress to help his son." The hearing was set for Friday. Julian's lawyer, a sharp woman named Caroline Reed, prepped them both. "They're going to paint you as a gold digger," she told Isabella bluntly. "They'll bring up your ex-husband's debt, your financial struggles, the timing of all this. You need to stay calm. Don't get defensive. Just tell the truth." "What if the truth sounds bad?" "Then we spin it. You needed work. He needed help. Two people in difficult situations finding a mutually beneficial arrangement. Nothing shameful about that, but it felt shameful." Under the courtroom lights, under Catherine's hateful glare, everything felt shameful. The night before the hearing, Isabella couldn't sleep. She wandered downstairs at 2 a.m. and found Julian already there, sitting in the dark kitchen. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "No." She sat across from him. Neither spoke for a while. "I've been thinking," Julian said finally, "about what happens if we lose. We're not going to lose. But if we do, if Catherine gets custody..." He stopped, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to survive that." "You'll survive because you'll fight. You'll appeal. You'll do whatever it takes." "What if whatever it takes isn't enough?" Isabella reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture surprised them both. "Then you'll still be his father," she said. "Nothing changes that. Not Catherine, not a judge, not anyone." Julian's fingers tightened around hers. "I'm scared." "I know, me too. I keep thinking about that first night, at the restaurant. If I just paid attention to him instead of those investors, if I'd been a better father from the start, maybe none of this would be happening." "You can't think like that." "Why not? It's true." "Maybe, but you're better now. You're here. You're fighting. That counts for something." Julian looked at their joined hands. "If this goes south tomorrow, I want you to know, I don't regret hiring you, even with all the mess, all the complications. You gave me my son back. That's worth everything." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. "Don't talk like we've already lost. I'm just saying, tschüss." "No. We're going to walk into that courtroom tomorrow and show them exactly what this is. A father trying to help his son. Nothing more, nothing less." "And what about us?" Julian asked quietly. "What are we?" The question she'd been avoiding. "I don't know," Isabella admitted, "but that's not what tomorrow is about. Tomorrow is about Ethan. The rest, we'll figure it out later." If there was a later. The hearing started at 9 a.m. in Family Court, King County. Isabella had never been in a courtroom before. It was smaller than she'd expected, less dramatic. Just a room with fluorescent lights and worn carpet and a judge who looked tired before they even started. Catherine sat on the opposite side with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who radiated aggressive competence. She wouldn't look at Julian, wouldn't look at Isabella, just stared straight ahead like they'd already won. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Henderson, reviewed the petition. "Ms. Clark is seeking emergency custody on the grounds that Mr. Vale has created an unstable environment for the minor child," she said. "Mr. Vale contests these allegations. Miss Reed, your opening statement." Caroline stood, composed and professional. "Your Honor, this is a case of grief weaponized. Ms. Clark hasn't seen her nephew in over a year. She missed his birthday, missed the anniversary of her sister's death, made no effort to be part of his life. Now, because she disagrees with her brother-in-law's parenting choices, she's using the courts to insert herself where she doesn't belong. Catherine's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Furthermore, Caroline continued, Mr. Vale has done nothing but try to help his son heal. He hired Ms. Cruz, a qualified childcare provider, to give Ethan support during a difficult time. The fact that Ms. Cruz lives on the property is a matter of security and convenience, nothing more. There is no evidence of impropriety, no evidence of harm to the child. This is a desperate attempt by a grieving woman to control a situation she has no right to control. She sat down. Catherine's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Vale moved his girlfriend and her daughter into the family home less than 2 years after his wife's death. He fired the child's longtime nanny for objecting to this arrangement. He's been photographed in compromising situations with Ms. Cruz. The child is being exposed to an adult relationship that he cannot possibly understand or process, all while still grieving his mother. Objection, Caroline said. There is no relationship. Ms. Cruz is an employee. An employee who lives in his house, spends every day with his child, and has replaced every maternal figure in the boy's life. That's not, Caroline started. Enough, Judge Henderson said. I want to hear from the child advocate, Dr. Morrison. The stern woman stood. Your Honor, I've spent considerable time observing the household. It's my professional opinion that while the arrangement is unconventional, there's no evidence of harm to the child. In fact, Ethan appears to be thriving. His teachers report improved behavior and academic performance. He's more socially engaged. He's formed a healthy attachment to Ms. Cruz and her daughter. Isabella felt a flicker of hope. However, Dr. Morrison continued, and the hope died. I do have concerns about the lack of clear boundaries. The child is confused about Ms. Cruz's role. He wants her to be more than an employee but doesn't understand why she isn't. This ambiguity could cause problems as he gets older. What are you recommending, Ots? The judge asked. I'm recommending that Ms. Cruz remain involved, but that clear boundaries be established and maintained. The living arrangement should be reevaluated. Perhaps Ms. Swoosh. Cruz could work with Ethan without residing in the home. Catherine's lawyer pounced. Your Honor, this supports our position. The current situation is confusing and potentially harmful. My client isn't asking for full custody. She's asking for joint custody with clear guidelines about who lives in the home and who has access to the child. Julian's hand clenched on the table. Isabella could feel his rage from across the aisle. Mr. Vale, the judge said, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me why this arrangement is necessary. Julian stood. He looked exhausted, beaten down, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. Your Honor, 18 months ago, my wife died, and I fell apart. I didn't know how to be a single parent. I didn't know how to help my son grieve. I threw money at the problem. Therapists, nannies, expensive schools. Nothing worked. Ethan was disappearing, getting quieter, sadder, more withdrawn. I was losing him. The courtroom was silent. Then I met Isabella, Julian continued. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She just saw a sad kid and was kind to him. And for the first time since Sarah died, Ethan smiled, really smiled. So yeah, I hired her. I know how it looks. I know people think it's weird or inappropriate or whatever, but I don't care. Because my son is healing. He's laughing again. He's making friends. He's becoming a kid again instead of a ghost. And your relationship with Ms. Cruz, the judge asked, is professional. She works for me, that's all. You don't find the living arrangement problematic? I find it practical. She has a daughter. My house has security. The press has been harassing her. I offered her safety, and she accepted. Some might say you're offering more than safety. Julian's jaw tightened. Some people need to mind their own business. Mr. Vale, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I'm tired of people making this into something it's not. I'm trying to be a good father. That's all I've ever tried to be. And if hiring someone to help me do that is a crime, then fine. I'm guilty. He sat down hard. Caroline looked like she wanted to strangle him for going off script. The judge turned to Catherine. Ms. Clark, I'd like to hear from you. Why now? Why, after a year of absence, are you suddenly concerned about your nephew's welfare? Catherine stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Because I couldn't bear to see him, Your Honor. He looked so much like my sister. Being around him hurt too much, but I realized now that I was being selfish. Sarah would want me to be there for her son, and when I saw what Julian was doing, bringing this woman into Sarah's home, into Ethan's life, I knew I had to act. What exactly is wrong with Ms. Cruz being involved? Nothing, if she was actually just helping. But she's not. She's playing house. She's trying to replace my sister. And Ethan is so desperate for a mother that he's latching onto someone who's only there for the paycheck. Isabella had been quiet through the whole proceeding, but that accusation, that Ethan was just a paycheck, broke something inside her. She stood up before Caroline could stop her. "That's not true," Isabella said. "Ms. Cruz," the judge said sharply. "Sit down." "No, I'm sorry, but I can't sit here and let her say that." Isabella turned to Catherine. "You don't know me. You don't know anything about why I'm here or what I feel for that little boy. Yeah, Julian pays me, but I'd be there for Ethan if he paid me nothing, because he matters to me, because he's sweet and smart and brave, and he deserves people who actually show up." "Miss Cruz," Caroline hissed. Isabella ignored her. "You want to know what's wrong with this situation? It's not me living in the house. It's not Julian hiring help. It's you. You, who disappeared when Ethan needed you most. You, who only came back when you saw a chance to control something. You don't want custody because you love him. You want it because you can't stand that Julian found a way to help him without you." The courtroom erupted. Catherine's lawyer was shouting objections. Caroline was pulling Isabella back into her chair. The judge was banging her gavel. "Order," Judge Henderson shouted. "Ms. Cruz, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." "I'm sorry, Your Honor," Isabella said. "Not sorry at all." The judge looked at her for a long moment. "Noted. Now sit down and let the lawyers handle this." Isabella sat. Her heart was hammering. Julian was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. The rest of the hearing blurred together. More testimony. More arguments. The judge called a recess, then came back with her decision. "I'm not granting emergency custody," she said, and Julian's entire body sagged with relief. "However, I am ordering that the living arrangement be modified. Ms. Cruz may continue working with Ethan, but she and her daughter will need to find alternate housing within 30 days. "Your Honor," Julian started. "That's my ruling, Mr. Vale. Additionally, I'm ordering a more thorough evaluation of the household over the next 3 months. If at the end of that period, I find that the current arrangement is genuinely in Ethan's best interest, we'll revisit. But for now, we need clear boundaries. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel came down. Catherine left looking smugly satisfied. Julian looked like he'd been punched. Isabella felt numb. Outside the courthouse, Julian pulled her aside. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'll appeal. We'll figure this out." "It's fine." "It's not fine. You were defending me in there. Defending Ethan. And now you're being punished for it. I knew what I was signing up for." "Did you?" Julian looked at her intently. "Because I'm not sure I did." Before she could respond, Marcus appeared. "We need to go. Press is already circling." They left separately, Julian through the front, Isabella through a side exit. The strategy was supposed to reinforce the just professional narrative. Instead, it felt like running away. That night, Isabella started looking for apartments she couldn't afford. Mia cried when she told her they were moving out. Ethan locked himself in his room and wouldn't come out. And Isabella realized with crushing clarity that no matter what the judge said, no matter what anyone believed, this had stopped being just a job a long time ago. She just hadn't been brave enough to admit it. The apartment Isabella found was worse than the one she'd left. Smaller, darker, in a building where the elevator worked maybe half the time, and the neighbors fought loud enough to hear 3 floors down. But it was available immediately, and within the pathetic budget she could scrape together now that she'd have to find other work again. Because there was no way this arrangement could continue. Not after the court ruling. Not after everything had been dragged into the light and examined and found wanting. She signed the lease on a gray Tuesday morning while Mia was at school and tried not to think about how much her daughter would hate it. How much she hated it. How it felt like moving backward after finally, briefly, being able to breathe. Julian called while she was standing in the empty apartment staring at water stains on the ceiling. "Don't do this," he said without preamble. "I don't have a choice. The judge ordered separate housing. She didn't say you had to move into a dump in a bad neighborhood. How do you know what neighborhood I'm in? Marcus is parked outside. He says the building has broken security cameras and drug deals happening in broad daylight. Isabella closed her eyes. Of course, Marcus was following her. Of course, Julian knew exactly how bad this was. I can't afford better, she said quietly. Then let me help. No, Isabella. No, Julian. That's exactly what everyone thinks is happening. That you're paying for me, supporting me. If I let you rent me an apartment, it just proves them right. I don't care what they think. Well, I do. And more importantly, the judge does. You want to lose Ethan? Because that's what happens if we keep blurring lines. Silence on the other end. She could hear him breathing, could picture him pacing in his office, running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was frustrated. This is wrong, he said finally. A lot of things are wrong. Doesn't mean we get to fix them. She hung up before he could argue further, before she could let him convince her to take the help she desperately needed but couldn't accept. The move happened over the weekend. Carmen helped, making pointed comments about how this was bullshit and Julian should be doing more, and Isabella was being too proud for her own good. You're punishing yourself, Carmen said, carrying a box of Mia's toys up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again. For what? For caring about that kid? For doing your job? For making it complicated. Life is complicated. That's not your fault. But it felt like her fault. It felt like she'd walked into Julian's life and destroyed the careful distance he'd maintained between himself and the world. Like she'd taken a grieving father and a traumatized child and made everything messier instead of better. Mia cried the first night in the new place, cried for her big room, for Ethan, for the backyard where they'd built forts and played pretend. I want to go back, she sobbed into Isabella's shoulder. I know, baby, I know. Why did we have to leave? Because sometimes grown-ups make things complicated and kids get stuck with the consequences. Not a great explanation, but the truth. Ethan took it worse. When Julian told him that Isabella and Mia had moved out, he went silent. Not sad silent, angry silent, the kind of silence that preceded explosions. The explosion came 2 days later at school. Isabella got the call from the principal at 11 a.m. Ethan had gotten into a fight. A bad one. He'd shoved another kid into a locker and punched him in the face when he tried to fight back. Mr. Vale is on his way, the principal said. But Ethan is asking for you. He won't talk to anyone else. Isabella's heart sank. I'll be right there. She found Ethan in the principal's office, sitting in a chair that was too big for him, his knuckles bruised and his face defiant. The other kid, older, bigger, sat across the room with his mother, an ice pack pressed to his eye. Julian arrived 5 minutes later, looking like he'd run from downtown. What happened? He asked the principal. Ethan attacked Marcus without provocation, the principal said. We have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. He called Isabella a whore, Ethan said flatly. The room went silent. Ethan, Julian started, he said she was sleeping with you for money. He said his mom said she was trash, so I hit him. The other mother gasped. My son did not. Yes, he did, Ethan interrupted. And you did say it. I heard you. At pickup last week. You said Isabella was trash and Dad was stupid for falling for it. The woman's face turned red. I never... You did, Julian said quietly. His voice was deadly calm. I heard you too. The principal looked between them, clearly in over her head. Regardless of what was said, violence is not acceptable. Ethan is suspended for 3 days. We'll need to discuss whether he can return after that. You're suspending him for defending someone? Isabella asked. We're suspending him for assault. The other kid called me a name and you're suspending me? Ethan's voice rose. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, the principal said. You'll learn that. I already know that, Ethan said. My mom died. My aunt tried to take me away. Everyone at school is mean to me. I know life isn't fair. But Isabella is nice to me and everyone says terrible things about her. Nobody does anything. So I did something. His voice cracked on the last word. Julian pulled his son into his arms. Okay, we're leaving. Mr. Vale, we're done here. Come on, Ethan. Isabella followed them out to the parking lot. Ethan was crying now, the anger giving way to the hurt underneath. I'm sorry, he he kept saying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You don't have anything to be sorry for, Julian said.
Yes, I do. I got in trouble. I made everything worse. You stood up for someone you care about. That's not wrong. Then why does everyone keep saying it is? Julian had no answer for that. They stood in the parking lot, the three of them, and Isabella realized this couldn't continue. Not like this. They were all bleeding and pretending the wounds weren't fatal. I need to talk to your dad, she told Ethan gently. Can you wait in the car with Marcus? Ethan nodded and left.
Marcus appeared from nowhere, shepherding the boy away with quiet efficiency. This has to stop, Isabella said once they were alone. I know. I mean it, Julian. We tried. It didn't work. It's time to cut losses before someone gets hurt worse than they already are. Ethan's already hurt. Pulling you away completely will destroy him. And keeping me around is destroying everything else. Your reputation, his school life, my daughter's stability. We can't keep sacrificing everyone for one kid's happiness. He's not just one kid. He's my son. I know that. But I have a daughter too, and she's miserable in that new apartment. She misses Ethan. She doesn't understand why we had to leave, and I don't know how to explain that we got caught in the crossfire of other people's judgment. Julian stepped closer. So what are you saying? You're done? I don't know what I'm saying. I just know this isn't working. It was working. Before the court, before Catherine, it was working perfectly. Nothing about this has ever been perfect, Julian. We were just pretending it was. I wasn't pretending. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Don't, Isabella said. Don't what? Don't make this about something it's not. We have a professional relationship that got messy, that's all. Is it? It has to be. Julian looked at her like he wanted to argue, but whatever he saw on her face made him stop. Fine, he said. Professional. But I'm not ending this. Ethan needs you, needs consistency, so we figure out how to make it work within the court's boundaries. You come to the house during designated hours. We maintain clear separation, whatever it takes. And what about what I need? The question came out sharper than Isabella intended. What about the fact that I can't afford that shitty apartment and childcare for Mia, and I'm going to have to find 2 more jobs just to make rent? What about the fact that this arrangement, as professional as it is, doesn't pay enough to cover the life the court is demanding I live separately? Julian's face went pale. I'll increase your salary. And prove everyone right? No thanks. Then what do you want me to do? I want you to let me go, Isabella said. The words hurt coming out. I want you to find someone else. Someone whose presence in your life doesn't cause problems. Someone who can help Ethan without all this mess. There is no one else. We've tried everyone else. Then try harder. She walked away before she could see his face, before she could take it back. That night, Isabella sat in her depressing apartment and tried to figure out what came next. Her phone rang constantly. Carmen, Julian, even Marcus checking in. She ignored all of it. Mia was asleep in their shared bedroom, curled around her stuffed elephant. The apartment was quiet, except for the couple fighting upstairs and the bass thumping from somewhere below. This was her life now. This was what standing on principle looked like. It felt like losing. The knock on her door came at 10 p.m. Isabella almost didn't answer, but something made her look through the peephole. Julian stood in her hallway, looking exhausted and determined. She opened the door. You can't be here. I know. If someone sees, I don't care. Julian, I need to tell you something, and you need to actually listen instead of running away. Isabella crossed her arms. Fine. Talk. I'm ending the arrangement, Julian said. Her stomach dropped. What? The professional arrangement, the contract, I'm tearing it up. I don't understand. Julian stepped closer. You were right. This whole thing has been a mess from the start. I tried to solve a problem with money and control, and it backfired spectacularly. I've been so focused on fixing Ethan that I forgot the most important thing, which is that you can't buy love, you can't contract it, you can't make it fit into neat professional boundaries. It exists or it doesn't, and trying to force it into the wrong shape just destroys it. Isabella's heart was hammering. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm firing you, effective immediately. No more salary, No more professional obligations. You're free to walk away completely if that's what you want. And if I don't walk away, then you stay because you want to, not because I'm paying you, not because there's a contract, because you care about Ethan, and maybe... He stopped, took a breath. Maybe because you care about more than just Ethan. The implication was clear. Isabella felt dizzy. You can't just... This doesn't solve anything. The court, Catherine, all of it. Actually, it does. If there's no employment relationship, there's no conflict of interest. You're just someone who cares about my son. Maybe someone who's dating his father. Maybe someone who's becoming part of our family. But not an employee. Not someone being paid to care. Dating, Isabella repeated faintly. If you want to, no pressure, no expectations, just a real chance to figure out what this actually is without all the other bullshit in the way. Isabella stared at him. This man who'd walked into her life with a desperate offer and turned everything upside down. Who'd tried to buy a solution and learned the hard way that some things couldn't be purchased. You're serious, she said, completely. You're willing to risk everything, the court evaluation, Catherine, all of it, on the possibility that I might actually want to be in your life without getting paid? Yes. That's insane. Probably. Julian smiled slightly. But I'm tired of doing the safe thing and having it blow up anyway. Might as well try the insane thing and see what happens. Isabella's mind raced. Without the salary, she'd be completely broke. Stuck in this terrible apartment with no way to afford anything better. Dependent on David's non-existent child support and whatever work she could scrape together. It was financial suicide. It was also the first honest thing anyone had offered her in months. I need to think about it, she said. Okay. And if I say yes, if I stay, it's not going to be easy. People will still talk. Catherine will still fight. The court will still judge. I know. And I have a daughter who comes first, always, non-negotiable. I wouldn't want it any other way. Isabella looked at him standing in her crappy hallway, offering her nothing but uncertainty and the chance to build something real. You're sure about this? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything. You said that about hiring me. And I was right, wasn't I? Just for the wrong reasons. Fair point. Okay, Isabella said. I'll think about it. But you need to leave, now, before someone sees you and this gets even more complicated. Julian nodded, started to leave, stopped. For what it's worth, he said. I should have done this months ago, should have been honest about what I was feeling instead of hiding behind contracts and professional boundaries. I'm sorry it took this long. He left before she could respond. Isabella closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. What the hell had just happened? She spent the next 3 days thinking, agonizing, making lists of pros and cons that didn't help because the decision wasn't rational. It was emotional, messy, terrifying. Carmen was no help. Do you like him? She asked. I don't know. Bullshit. Do you like him? It's complicated. It's not complicated. Do you get excited when you see him? Do you think about him when he's not around? Do you want to kiss him? Isabella's face burned. Carmen, that's a yes. So the question isn't whether you like him. The question is whether you're brave enough to do something about it. Brave? Isabella had never felt less brave in her life. But she thought about Ethan asking why she had to leave. About Mia crying for her friend. About Julian standing in her hallway offering her honesty instead of money. And she made her decision. The follow-up court hearing was scheduled for exactly 3 months after the first one, just like Judge Henderson had ordered. Isabella showed up with Julian, but not as his employee, as herself, whatever that meant. Dr. Morrison presented her findings first. The household has undergone significant changes, she said. Ms. Cruz is no longer employed by Mr. Vale. She and her daughter maintain separate residence. However, she continues to spend time with Ethan regularly. The relationship appears to have evolved into something more personal. How personal? The judge asked. They're dating, Your Honor, Julian said. We're trying to. It's new and complicated, but it's real. Catherine's lawyer jumped on it. So he's replaced the professional relationship with a romantic one? That's even less appropriate. How is it less appropriate? Julian asked. People date, single parents date. I'm allowed to have a personal life. Not when it confuses your traumatized son. Ethan isn't confused, Isabella said quietly.
He knows exactly what's happening. Does he? Catherine's lawyer pulled out a document. Because according to his school counselor, he told her just last week that he wishes Ms. Cruz was his new mom. That sounds like confusion to me. The words hit Isabella like a truck. She glanced at Julian, who looked equally stunned.
May I see my nephew? Catherine asked the judge. I haven't been allowed visitation since the last hearing. That's because you haven't requested it, Julian said. I'm requesting it now. Judge Henderson considered. I'll allow supervised visitation. 1 hour today. Bailiff, please bring the child in. Ethan had been waiting in a separate room with Marcus. When the bailiff brought him in, he looked scared. His eyes found Isabella immediately. Hey, buddy, she said softly. He didn't smile. Ethan, the judge said gently, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? A small nod. Do you know why you're here? Because Aunt Catherine wants to take me away. She wants to spend time with you. Is that something you'd like? Ethan looked at Catherine like she was a stranger, which, essentially, she was. I guess, he said. Can you tell me about Isabella? About your relationship with her? Ethan's hands clenched. She's my friend, and my dad's friend, and Mia's mom. How do you feel about her? I like her. She's nice to me. The counselor said you wish she was your mom. Is that true? Ethan's face crumpled. I didn't mean like replace my real mom. I just meant she does mom stuff. She makes me snacks and helps with homework and doesn't get mad when I'm sad. And I thought maybe if she was my mom, she wouldn't have to leave. The courtroom went silent. Why did you think she would leave? The judge asked. Because everyone leaves. Mrs. Peterson left, Aunt Catherine left, my real mom left, everyone always leaves. Catherine made a sound. When Isabella looked over, she was crying. Ethan, the judge said, if you could choose, what would you want to happen? I want Isabella and Mia to come back. I want us to be a family. All of us together. Even if that means your dad and Isabella are dating? I want them to date. I want them to get married. I want Mia to be my real sister. His voice rose. I want to stop being sad all the time, and I want people to stop fighting about stupid stuff, and I want everyone to just stop making everything so hard. He was crying now. Julian moved to comfort him, but Ethan ran to Isabella instead, wrapped his arms around her waist, and sobbed into her shirt. Isabella held him, her own eyes stinging. Over his head, she met Julian's gaze, saw the same fear and hope she felt reflected back. Your Honor, Catherine said. Her voice was shaking. May I speak? Go ahead. Catherine stood. She looked at her nephew clinging to Isabella, and something in her face broke. I was wrong, she said, about all of this. I thought I was protecting Ethan from a stranger taking advantage, but the truth is, I was protecting myself from having to face my grief. Seeing him hurts. Seeing him happy hurts worse because Sarah should be here to see it. She should be the one making him smile. Her voice cracked. But she's not here, and I can't bring her back by punishing Julian for trying to move forward. I can't bring her back by destroying something that's actually helping Ethan heal. She looked at Isabella. I don't know you. I've been awful to you, but my nephew loves you. That's obvious. And I think my sister would be grateful that there's someone in his life who cares that much. Catherine, Julian started. I'm withdrawing my petition, Catherine said. For custody. For visitation. All of it. This was never about what's best for Ethan. It was about my guilt and grief and anger. I'm sorry. The judge looked surprised. Ms. Clark, are you sure? I'm sure. Catherine wiped her eyes. Ethan deserves better than what I've been giving him. He deserves people who show up, who stay, who actually love him instead of just saying they do. She gathered her things and left. Her lawyer scrambled to follow. In the silence that followed, Judge Henderson looked at the three of them, Julian, Isabella, and Ethan, still wrapped around her. This is highly irregular, she said. I know, Your Honor, Julian said, but I've seen enough damaged children in this courtroom to recognize when one is actually thriving. And despite the mess, despite the unconventional nature of this arrangement, your son appears to be doing better than he was 6 months ago. He is, Isabella confirmed quietly. So here's what's going to happen. I'm closing this case. No more evaluations, no more court supervision. But Mr. Vale, if I hear that you've put your personal life ahead of your son's well-being, We'll be right back here. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Cruz, you're taking on a complicated situation. A grieving child, a man with more money than sense, and a whole lot of people watching your every move. You sure you want this? Isabella looked down at Ethan, then at Julian, then back at the judge. I'm sure, she said. Then you're all dismissed, and for what it's worth, good luck. You're going to need it. Outside the courthouse, Julian pulled Isabella aside while Marcus entertained the kids. That was, he started. Insane? Isabella supplied. I was going to say perfect, but insane works too. Your sister-in-law just had a breakdown in open court. A productive breakdown. Well, there's no such thing as a productive breakdown. Julian smiled. There is when it ends with us getting to actually try this. Really try this. No court oversight, no Catherine threatening custody, just us figuring out how to be together. Together, Isabella repeated, testing the word. If you want to be. I'm still broke. I still live in a terrible apartment. I still have no idea what I'm doing. So do I. We'll figure it out together. You're not broke. No, but I'm definitely clueless about most things that matter. Julian stepped closer. I know this is fast. I know it's messy. But I also know that I haven't felt this alive since Sarah died. You make me want to be better, not just for Ethan, for myself, for you. Isabella's heart was pounding. I'm scared. Me too. What if we screw this up? Then we'll screw it up together. At least we'll have good company. She laughed despite herself. That's a terrible sales pitch. I'm out of practice. He touched her face gently. Can I kiss you, or is that too fast? Definitely too fast. Okay. But she kissed him anyway, soft and brief and terrifying in all the best ways. Behind them she could hear Ethan and Mia cheering. Apparently Marcus had failed at distracting them. When they pulled apart, Julian was smiling, really smiling, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look younger. So what now? Isabella asked. Now we go home. I don't have a home. I have a crappy apartment. Then we fix that, together. No contracts, no conditions. Just us. It sounded too simple, too easy. But watching Ethan and Mia running circles around Marcus, watching the way Julian looked at her like she was something precious instead of hired help, Isabella thought maybe simple was exactly what they needed. The next few months weren't perfect. Isabella kept her terrible apartment for longer than she wanted because moving in together too fast felt like tempting fate. Julian worked too much and had to learn how to actually be present instead of throwing money at problems. The kids had meltdowns, and the press still occasionally dug up the story, and people at school still whispered. But slowly, carefully, they built something real. Isabella found work that didn't require 3 jobs to survive. Julian cut back his hours and learned to say no to meetings that conflicted with dinner. Ethan started therapy again with a counselor who actually understood grief instead of trying to fix it. Mia made friends at her new school and stopped asking when they were moving back to the big house. And 6 months after that final court hearing, Julian proposed. Not with a flashy ring or a grand gesture, just the two of them in his kitchen late at night, both exhausted from a day of managing 2 kids and work and life. Marry me, he said. Isabella, who'd been loading the dishwasher, turned to stare at him. What? Marry me. Move in. Make this official. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but yes. Wait, really? Really? You didn't even let me finish. You were going to talk yourself out of it if I let you keep going, so yes, I'll marry you. Julian pulled her close, and Isabella felt something settle in her chest, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. They told the kids the next morning. Ethan cried happy tears and asked if this meant Mia was really going to be his sister. Mia asked if she could wear a princess dress to the wedding. Anything you want, Julian said. The wedding was small, immediate family only, which meant Carmen and Marcus and a few of Julian's colleagues who'd stuck around through the chaos. Catherine sent a card with her apologies and her blessing. It was something. They got married in the backyard of Julian's house, their house now, with Ethan as the ring bearer and Mia as the flower girl. The officiant kept it short because Mia was already getting antsy. When it was over and they were officially married, Ethan hugged Isabella tight. You're really staying, he whispered. I'm really staying, she promised. Forever?
forever.
And she meant it. Life didn't magically become perfect after the wedding. Isabella still worried about money sometimes, even though she didn't need to. Julian still struggled with letting people in. The kids still had hard days when grief hit them sideways. But they had each other. They had a family built from broken pieces and desperate choices, and the willingness to keep showing up even when it hurt. On Ethan's 8th birthday, they went back to Bellevue, the same restaurant where it had all started. The same table in this corner with the view of Seattle glittering below. But this time, Ethan sat between Isabella and Julian, grinning as Mia told an increasingly wild story about a dragon who worked at the restaurant. The mac and cheese sat on his plate, half-eaten because he'd actually been hungry enough to try it. Julian caught Isabella's eye across the table and smiled. That private smile that was just for her. The one that said they'd made it. Against odds and gossip and every reason this shouldn't have worked, they'd made it. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly while the kids debated whether the waiter was secretly a wizard. That first night, how different everything was. Regret it? Not even a little bit. He reached for her hand under the table. "Me neither," Ethan noticed and made a face. "Gross, you guys are being mushy again." "Get used to it, buddy," Julian said. "I will never get used to it," Ethan declared, but he was smiling. Later, after they'd eaten cake and opened presents and Mia had fallen asleep in the car on the way home, Isabella carried her daughter upstairs while Julian did the same with Ethan. They met in the hallway between the kids' rooms. "Good birthday?" Julian asked. "The best," Isabella said. "Think we can do this for another 70 or 80 years? The birthday parties or the marriage?" "Both," as Isabella pretended to think about it. "I'll need to check my calendar." He kissed her, soft and slow. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." And standing there in the hallway of the house that had started as a prison of grief and become a home full of laughter, Isabella realized that sometimes the best things in life came from the messiest beginnings. From desperate offers and broken hearts, and the courage to keep trying even when everyone said it was impossible. They'd started as a transaction, a billionaire trying to buy healing for his son and a waitress trying to survive. But they'd become something else entirely, a family. Imperfect and complicated and real, and that was worth more than all the money in the world.